Get the meal and bath ready quickly.
My husband, as if he didn't even notice my presence, said those words with an indifferent attitude while engrossed in the TV. I had gradually become accustomed to his cold behavior. Each time I realized this fact, a deep sadness and a strong sense of humiliation welled up within me. Please wait a little. Let me finish breastfeeding. Then I'll start. Holding my 1-month-old baby and feeding her, I couldn't possibly multitask at that moment. Every day, I struggled to balance housework and childcare, and the physical exhaustion affected my mental state too. Before I could even respond to John in my fatigue, I suddenly felt a jolt in my abdomen. Before understanding what happened, I instinctively curled up to protect my child with tiny hands. It was a kick from John. In shock, I looked up to see him looking down at me smugly. The next moment, as John raised his hand towards me, suddenly a voice calling his name echoed from behind. John's expression changed dramatically. My name is Mia. After graduating from college, I worked at the front office of the company run by my father. During one of the company events, I met John. He was a leader in the sales department. Our first encounter showcased his earnest attitude and kindness. We quickly bonded over shared interests and values. In fact, our marriage had the strong support of our families, especially my father, who highly regarded John's character and sincerity towards work. After receiving blessings from many friends and relatives, we got married a year ago. We looked forward to a future filled with love and happiness, but John's demeanor changed dramatically soon after. Accepting John's wishes after marriage, I resigned from the company and started a new life as a full-time housewife. I loved doing household chores and put my heart into everything. For a newlywed like me, this was a new role. However, about a month into our marriage, I started noticing changes in John's behavior.
The taste of today's dinner is different from usual, isn't it? Why is the room so messy? Can't you be a bit more efficient? Since you're at home, I'd like things to be done more promptly.
I was deeply shocked by John's sudden change in behavior and was at a loss for words. From the first time I met John until our wedding day when we exchanged rings, I never imagined he would speak so harshly to me. It was the first time I was treated so coldly, and I reflected on whether there was a problem with my behavior. Responding to these feelings, I tried even harder to do my household chores meticulously and with love. However, despite my efforts, John did not appreciate me and instead increased his criticisms. Feeling that this couldn't go on, I decided to have lunch with a close friend from college after a long time. She happened to work near John's office and shared some interesting information about his behavior at work. Lately, during his breaks with colleagues, John has been boasting.
Actually, I married the boss's daughter.
Hearing this for the first time, I felt guilty towards my friend and developed mixed feelings towards John. I began to wonder if our marriage was just a way for John to obtain the title of son-in-law of the CEO, and feelings of doubt and disappointment crossed my mind. What was supposed to be a refreshing lunch added to my emotional burden, and by the time I headed home, I felt even more downcast. That evening, like always, John came home after work. As soon as he sat down on the living room couch, he looked down at me, grabbed the TV remote, and started watching his favorite channel. Beside him was a glass filled with his favorite brand of whiskey, and as he refilled it, time seemed to move leisurely. Whether it was because of the alcohol or not, he suddenly said,
Well, you seem to just stay at home without doing much. Maybe you should work outside. But of course, you shouldn't neglect the housework. I want you to have everything done perfectly.
In fact, what prompted me to quit my job was John's request to prioritize our family. Faced with this unexpected demand from John, I felt surprised and confused. However, fearing that arguing would only lead to more conflict, I reluctantly agreed. I truly enjoyed my job at the reception desk, interacting and communicating with people. I'm not sure what kind of job I'll seek out in the future, but I felt that having some form of employment would be a positive change for me, rather than just staying home and only doing housework. However, since our marriage, John's words and actions have constantly put me on edge. I spent every day feeling emotionally and physically exhausted, never finding peace. A few days later, I started working as a cashier at a nearby large grocery store. Maintaining the daily home routine while also fulfilling my duties outside was not easy. It was indeed a challenging situation, but there were benefits for me. I was able to have some luxurious time fully dedicated to my work, providing a brief escape and refreshing break from daily household chores and worries. However, John's behavior remained the same, never changing. He constantly criticized my housework and even belittled the new job I had taken on.
The job you're working on doesn't really produce any significant results, does it? The only reason you can support yourself on that meager income is because I provide the main income for our household.
I was completely drained, mentally and physically, from John's daily directives and pressure. Around that time, I suddenly began feeling ill. I hadn't anticipated this, so I decided to see a doctor right away. The diagnosis revealed that I was pregnant. I was filled with mixed emotions, receiving this gift of life while living under John's directives. I secretly hoped that our child's birth might soften John's attitude a bit. With this faint hope in mind, I mustered the courage to tell him about the pregnancy that night.
Oh, I see. So, when's the due date?
His reaction was far from the warmth I had hoped for. It was cold and indifferent. In the days that followed, John began to take for granted that I would handle all the household chores. Of course, I wanted children in the future, but deep down I felt uneasy about having children in our unstable marriage. Despite this, I quickly chose to share the news of my pregnancy with my parents. The next day, John and I visited my father's house. Upon hearing the news, my father's eyes lit up, saying,
"So, a grandchild is on the way."
He approached me with a beaming smile. My equally delighted mother speculated, "I wonder if it's a girl or a boy," while chatting with my father. Meanwhile, John seemed somewhat subdued in front of my father, quietly listening to our family's conversation with a smile. I believe he always strives to make a good impression in front of my father, even at work. However, when we're alone, his attitude towards me has been increasingly cold and sometimes harsh. For a long time, I've wanted to share with my parents the truth about my complex relationship with John. But out of hesitation to sadden them, who wholeheartedly blessed our marriage, I never did. Recently, however, I couldn't bear John's attitude any longer and was considering coming clean. But seeing my parents' loving smiles, it was hard to put those feelings into words. After a moment of silence, my father asked my mother to bring something over. Upon receiving the news of my pregnancy, he clearly had a heartwarming surprise planned. And what appeared before my eyes was the latest nanny cam.
Even when you're out, you can use this camera to check on your home. I believe it'll be useful for your new life.
I was filled with gratitude for this unexpected gift. Imagining our new family's daily life, I couldn't help but look forward to the future. Looking at my parents, I could tell they genuinely blessed our new beginning. Glancing at John's gentle smile, I hoped he was also eagerly anticipating our new life and the birth of our child. However, upon arriving home, those hopes were immediately shattered. John snatched the camera from my hands and aggressively threw it to the ground.
Why did you bring this useless thing home?
His anger peaked, and he stomped on the camera multiple times. "Stop!" I cried out in agony, but the camera was already beyond repair.
Clean up this mess. And remember, it was you who carelessly dropped and broke this.
With that, John closed the room door. The gap between how he acted outside and inside the house was vast. This behavior made it evident that he lacked passion and love for our unborn child. The generous gift I was most looking forward to from my parents was ruined in this manner. I hadn't even dreamed this could happen. Overwhelmed with shock and disappointment, I gently sat on the floor and tried to take a deep breath. The warmth I felt earlier rapidly faded, replaced by surprise, fear, and suspicion. I worried if my unborn child, who was actively moving inside me, would be okay in this environment. I began to question my life choices, especially deciding to get married. However, my feelings of love for this child remained unchanged, and I still wanted to bring them into this world and shower them with love. Amidst these complicated emotions, tears naturally flowed. To avoid further confrontation with John, I shakily took out my smartphone and carefully informed my parents of the situation. A few months later, our adorable daughter was born. After discussing with my parents, we named her Lily. My father seemed particularly attached to this name and advised John to actively take paternity leave. However, that leave period was filled with days of anxiety and tension for me. Spending all day, from early morning to late at night, with John was suffocating. Whenever my father managed to visit us amidst his busy schedule, John would act as if he were sharing household and childcare responsibilities just because my parents were around. But once they left, he reverted to his cold, strict behavior. Even when I was experiencing postpartum fatigue and changes in my health, he showed no cooperation or understanding and continued to blame me. Pushing my constantly tired body, I struggled with household chores and childcare. My fatigue was increasing day by day. It would be easier if you supported me even a little. But John seemed completely indifferent to my pleas.
Why do I have to do it too?
That was the cold response I always received. Despite my persistent requests, the outcome remained unchanged. I was frequently yelled at, and sometimes he would storm out of the house. And when he returned home at night,
Start preparing the meal in the bath right now.
even while I was breastfeeding our baby, he sometimes forcibly pulled my hair. Wait a moment. As soon as I finish breastfeeding the baby, I'll get to it. I desperately tried to reason with him daily. On one particularly exhausting night, I wished to put Lily to bed as soon as possible to get some rest for myself. However, she showed no signs of falling asleep and cried out loudly. My fatigue had reached its limit, and I wanted to put Lily to bed quickly to refresh even a little. His harsh words in that situation added unnecessary pressure.
She's so loud. Can't you even put the child to sleep properly?
In our living room, which is the center of our daily life, John seemed to be enjoying his time, engrossed in watching TV. Meanwhile, he continuously ordered me to do various household chores and frequently yelled at me with a disgruntled face. Perhaps frightened by his loud voice, Lily cried even louder. I felt an overwhelming sense of despair deep within, thinking, I'm trying so hard. Why can't he understand? While looking at him with heartache, I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my abdomen. Before I could comprehend what was happening, I collapsed onto the floor. My whole body was echoing with pain, and I realized the violence John had inflicted on me, especially a kick, was the cause. He was looking at me, seemingly enjoying the scene. Just as he was about to attack further,
Stop it.
his voice echoed throughout the room, and John looked shocked. He looked around, trying to identify the source of the voice.
I'm here. I witnessed everything you did.
John approached the direction of the voice, near the bookshelf located at the edge of the living room. Then, with a voice mixed with surprise and anxiety, he said,
Why? Why are you here?
Light was faintly seeping from a section of the bookshelf packed with books. Curious about the source of the light, I discovered it was from the blinking lamp of a state-of-the-art surveillance camera. Surprisingly, the camera's display showed a concerned face of my father. After John broke the old camera, I sought help from my father and had him arrange a new surveillance camera. I placed the camera in a gap between books that John hardly touches, thinking he would never notice. I carefully adjusted the angle to ensure that the entire living room was within the camera's view. My father, hoping to see his adorable grandchild, ended up witnessing an unexpected scene.
I'm on my way. Wait for me.
Despite his calm demeanor, I could clearly sense the anger in my father's voice. John stared at the camera screen in disbelief, eyes wide. I seized this moment to lock the room door securely. Unsure of John's intentions and determined to protect our child, I decided to stay locked in the room. John's usually gentle face was now filled with rage. He began to pound on the door with all his might, aiming to vent his anger at us.
What are you thinking, Mia? You should always follow my lead. If you don't come out now, you're mine now that we're married.
That's an outdated mindset. I won't be controlled by you anymore.
How dare you talk back like that? If you won't come out on your own, I'll force you out.
There was clear anger and madness in John's eyes, and he was desperately trying to open the door. I had never seen him this intimidating before.
That's enough. Is that all you wanted to say?
Surprisingly, behind John stood my father, cautious yet confident. His deep voice echoed throughout the room. I felt relieved that I had previously been given a spare key to my father for safety precautions. John was so fixated on opening the door that he didn't notice my father quietly entering the house.
I've witnessed everything that's happening here. I've never been this angry in my life. The attitude you showed to my precious daughter and scaring our young grandchild is unforgivable.
John's face turned pale, and he trembled in shock and fear.
The company you work for is run by my friend. Don't show your face there ever again, and never come close to my daughter, grandchild, or me ever again.
After rebuking John with harsh words, father forcibly escorted him out of the house. Shortly after, my mother, Lily, and I worriedly rushed to the hospital. The doctor's diagnosis confirmed no serious injuries, but recommended rest for some time due to the mental trauma. With my father's assistance, a few days later, I was informed that my divorce from John was officially finalized. During the divorce proceedings, evidence from John's past actions and footage I secretly recorded from surveillance cameras played a decisive role. As a result, I was able to receive appropriate compensation from my ex-husband. Seeking peace of mind, Lily and I chose to temporarily live in the comforting home of my parents. They deeply worried for me, questioning why I didn't tell them sooner and why I hadn't sought help from those willing to assist. A few days later, my ex-husband unexpectedly visited me. Although he had managed to regain employment, he was embroiled in a new controversy. He had broken a marriage promise to a woman and acquired money dishonestly. That woman was now demanding the money back and additional compensation. From my ex-husband's words, it was evident that the woman had a strong and intense personality, and he was genuinely afraid of her. She was pressuring him to actually proceed with their marriage if he couldn't repay her. The distressed ex-husband earnestly sought financial help from me. However, I calmly communicated that it was all his own doing and his responsibility. After the divorce, I returned to my former job and dedicatedly engaged in daily tasks. Seeing the changed me, John began trying to woo me back.
You look truly beautiful now.
However, unfazed by his words, I made an excuse to go to the restroom and made a call to set a plan in motion. Just as John tried to continue our conversation, an unexpected woman suddenly appeared.
Oh, why are you here?
An expression of shock appeared on John's face. The woman was a victim whom John had previously tried to defraud by pretending to promise marriage. In fact, after divorcing John, out of curiosity to know what he was up to, I sought my father's help. I closely monitored his actions. I knew he was engaging in potentially fraudulent activities again. This woman was his new target. I had also gathered information about her background. I understood how he was interacting with her. Unable to comprehend everything, John left the scene with the woman, looking utterly stunned. After a while, John started visiting our company, always finding reasons to meet. However, the only person who met him directly was the CEO, who was my father. After being warned about potential legal action, John's visits to the company were drastically reduced. According to my father, John is now seeking help from his family and friends. He's trying to gather compensation. He's living frugally and working diligently every day. My job has been going well, and opportunities for new tasks have increased. Spending time with Lily has become precious to me. I'm enjoying our daily life together. On busy days, I sometimes rely on my parents to care for Lily. With such support, I can balance both work and family. I intend to remain a trusted mother, while striving for further success in my professional field.